I get into bed. Okay. Start making out, whatever.
Okay.
No more bra and underwear. She's completely naked this time. The bra and underwear are gone by the time I get in there. And so, like, I reach in the drawer, put on a condom. We start like having like crazy sex, and it's like rough, like turn her around, like the whole thing. And we both have orgasms that are like kind of loud, but there's music, and it's like we're kind of using that to our advantage or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, like, see you out there, and she's like, whatever. The lights they never came back. Why would I turn the light back
Dustin,
on? Right?
I'm so scared.
You should be scared. There's a big twist coming.
Okay. Hey everybody, I am here with a very fun guest today, my buddy Dustin. He has spent 15 years in the nightlife and learned a lot in the process about sex and about humans. And he wanted to continue that party minus the nightlife. And so a couple years ago, he started the Sex Party podcast. And I've been a guest twice on his podcast, and I thought it was about time that he comes on the Ask a Sex Therapist. So welcome, Dustin.
I'm so happy to be here. I feel like you've been an incredible guest on my podcast and taught all of us, myself and the audience over there, about many different things that we needed to know about, right?
I try. Thank you.
I'm happy. I'm happy just to be a guest on someone else's podcast. This is a different version of myself that a lot of people don't get to see. So
I know. I'm excited to get to ask you some questions just because you've been the one asking the questions so far. So it's fun for me for you to be in the hot seat.
I love the hot seat.
Okay, that's good. So I want to know, like, did you ever think you'd be a sex podcaster?
No.
Okay.
I never, that was never in the plan.
Yeah.
Originally it was like, depending how far back you want to go, but originally it was like actor, director, maybe comedian, right? Like I did 2 years of study at Second City here in Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. A year of acting, a year of improv. That'll humble you.
For sure.
Yeah. Like growing up and still to this day, I was like obsessed with like James Dean and Marlon Brando and all that.
Okay.
But I just, it's weird. As I got involved in nightlife, I really fell in love with hosting. And I remember like as a kid, like, being under the blankets, like watching David Letterman and Saturday Night Live and all of that. And I always like really admired that energy of like a host. And so when I went to try to become an actor,
I want to hear all about that. How did you attempt to be an actor? What went down?
Well, I mean, early on, like when I was 18, I remember doing like student films and like shooting my mouth off like at parties, like, that I want to be an actor. And I read every book I could on James Dean. I watched every documentary, about every DVD. And I just was like obsessed with this like dramatic acting, really. And so I was in all these student films, and in one of the student films I was actually naked, so that tape is floating around somewhere probably.
We'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, just waiting for my announcement to run for Senate or something. And so I tried all this stuff early on. I remember I went to New York City just to like loiter outside of the Actors Studio, which is where like James Dean and Brando and Pacino and Marilyn Monroe went. So I was like, I just wanted to like see the building, and I wound up like kind of conning my way inside to talk to someone.
I could totally see you doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I was 19 years old, so it was like I just wanted to. When you're that age, you just want to touch that. You just want to touch something real, tangible. And it just, I don't know. I just think that I never would commit to it. tried to move to New York at one point in time and all that stuff, but it just never really worked out. And then so when I landed in Chicago, um, you know, I just was a huge fan of everybody who's come out of Chicago, comedian or not.
Yeah.
I never really, and
Like
the thing
me,
is, I
for
never
example.
well, you came out of
From
Chicago, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So when I got here originally, I just thought, I kept looking at Second City because, you know, a lot of the greats went there. I never really wanted to do comedy, although everyone's like, "Oh, you should do comedy. You're quick and witty
You
and
are,
whatever." And I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, I want to do drama," you know.
Okay.
But they had an acting program, and I went, and it just like really scared the shit out of me like right away, because they were serious, which is great, but it was like I was, you know, choosing these monologues that were incredibly difficult, you know, to play the psychopath, and I desperately, like, aggressively wanted to be like a method actor, right? This thing that we hear about all the time. And I remember, like, for one of the parts that I had for one of the monologues, it was this guy who had like shot a famous rock star, like a la Mark David Chapman and John Lennon. And so me being the method actor, right? I'm like, you know, in my pea coat, James Dean in it all over Chicago. And I'm like walking around thinking about, like, you're a killer, you shoot, like I'm thinking about shooting. And like, and so I started to feel incredibly guilty about it. And I went to my acting coach, like, you know, the teacher. I was like, you know, in class in front of 30 people, I said, you know, I want to be a method actor, and I like kind of feel guilty about like thinking about shooting all these people I see in public. He's like, get in the hallway.
What?
And I'm like, oh no.
Like he
And he
shamed
like,
you?
he put me in the hallway. So then I went, he's like, I'll be out there in a minute.
Okay.
And he goes out there and he like kind of gets in my face a little bit. He's like, listen, I've been doing this for 45 years. We don't do that method acting shit. It's like, the reason you felt guilty is because you have a conscience. He's like, he's like, you're a character actor.
Okay.
Learn the fucking lines, do the role, stop thinking about killing people. I'm like, well, it's not because I want to be or whatever.
Right.
And so, and you know, I learned, the weird thing is it really taught me, you know, I was in my late 20s, early 30s at that point. And I was like, okay, like time's running out for me, kind of thing. Which I don't believe anymore. But I felt like this ticking clock kind of thing, like you're not 18 anymore, number one. And number two, like something about acting, it just didn't feel, it didn't feel right for some reason. And I felt a strange comfortability in hosting, right? Like, and it's weird, but it almost like reverse. Like most people can hide themselves in the roles. Like, can play a drug addict, they can play a rodeo clown, whatever, right? And they can cry, and like, it's not, you know, they can use their real stuff. For me, it was the reverse. Like I figured out that I could hide being behind my own face, being the host. If I'm in control, so that's what happened. And so I kind of like, you know, completed the year of acting, and I was like, God, I suck. And then I was like, what can I do to scare myself to like be better? Like, I'll sign up for improv. And so I did that. An additional year of improv was tons of fun, but again, there was, those nerves were there in a way that I wasn't used to. And so it was all these theater kids, and they were like, we need someone to host it. And they would just point at me, you know, and the teacher was like,
interesting.
At the end of it, the teacher like slipped me this envelope right before we went up on stage for the big show that you do at the end of the semester. And when I got home and opened it, you know, after 6 shots of whiskey after the show, like he's like, never forget, as you move through life, that, you know, over the course of this calendar year, like they look to you to be the host and like shepherd them through all this or whatever. He's like, that's where your strength is. Like, figure out how to use that. And I was like, okay, you know, I still have the card. Actually, it's in a frame in my office. So it's like, Yeah. So, a couple of years later, pandemic hits. I'm like, the nightlife shtick is kind of over. I'm not an actor. Like, what am I doing? And I felt really great about being a host. And I obviously had hosted like 15 years worth of events and parties
Mm-hmm.
and been on the news and been on the radio and was
Cool.
like just
Okay.
comfortable being that guy. And I'm a huge movie fan. Obviously, we've established that. And it was like, let's do a movie podcast. Duh, we're going to
Oh,
talk movies, right?
interesting.
And then I thought, well, I'm such a fan of all these people. Like when I have a moment, that's where I go. I go to YouTube, I go to Instagram. I watch this. I watch, the movie people like break down everything from, the Christopher Nolan stuff to the Marvel stuff. I'm a fan of
Mm-hmm.
all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'll never be, number one, I'll never be as good as these guys. Number two, does the world need another movie podcast? No. And then so I thought, at least not for me. I actually I saw on Instagram, I saw somebody, they posted Alex Cooper, like, oh God, I love her so much. And she's the host of Call Her Daddy.
Right.
And this is like a year before anything happened with them.
Okay.
And so I was like, who is this person? Right. So I looked and I found Call Her Daddy, and she's like, blowjobs, cum, gangbang, whatever. I'm looking, wait, you can do that? Like, and I sort of looked at my life, and all the messages in my phone was like me and women talking about sex, right? It was like all the conversations that I had in my life that were interesting
Mm-hmm.
were about film or about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, wait a minute, and I was like, wouldn't that be interesting if the guy who's totally not qualified would go and find qualified people to interview
Mm-hmm.
every week for a sex show? And like, my life is sort of a party. I know how to throw a party, and
Mm-hmm.
sex party, bam,
It is
play on words.
perfect.
And so, and yeah, thank you. And then here we are.
That's awesome. It's really interesting hearing your story and thinking about like some of the commonalities. So I never really thought about it as hosting per se, but I always
Mm.
like welcoming people, and like making people feel comfortable. And if they're kind of new to a space, like kind of just like I used to be a greeter at the Buddhist temple that I went to in
Oh,
Chicago.
wow.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's like at
Nice.
Lincoln and Cornelia. It's got like a bright yellow facade. But yeah, so I would be the greeter, and I just loved it. I just loved being like present with people and showing them around and telling them how things worked. And so I relate to that. And I also had moments of thinking about acting, which is so interesting that you also mentioned
Mhm.
that. So I feel like it's not an accident that we have these certain commonalities. So basically, if anyone out there is listening and thinking about being a sex podcast host, you
Go be an actor.
you should
No, I'm
like
kidding.
hosting and welcoming
Yeah.
people. And right. And
Ah.
you should have a little bit of a penchant for drama. So
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is I still treat, like, if you look at all the teasers, or even the app, like if you look at the episode titles, if you go and look at every episode title
Mhm.
for Sex Party, there's a there's a either a pop culture or like rock and roll, but mainly film. The first
Oh,
episode,
interesting.
the little Easter eggs, whatever, in the show. But the first episode of Sex Party is titled "Welcome to the Party, Pal," which is a line from Die Hard. So like,
Oh.
yeah. So like, every single episode usually has some sort of little wink or a nod to that. And the teasers are, obviously I put out 15 teasers a week.
You do.
They're
It's so
very
fun.
dramatic.
They're so dramatic, and I love it. Because I love the
Yeah.
drama too. And I also have a theory. I don't know if I said this on your show or not, but I think of kink as like drama for sex.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've gone to like kink, like a munch or a meetup or something, it's what I think of is like, oh, it's like the theater kids from high school but grown up.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
you said that. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah.
So but I think
No,
that's
I think that's
interesting
great.
that I'm like, it all kind of goes together, I think, like a little bit of the drama and a little bit of the
Mhm.
wanting to make people comfy and curiosity about sex. And yeah, I think sex is super fun to talk about. So anyways, if anyone wants to start a sex podcast, hit us up.
We won't charge you for advice, or maybe we will.
Yeah,
Don't
we
know.
probably will. But the other piece you mentioned was kind of about like the censorship, and you said with Call Her Dad, you're like, damn, she's like actually able to say these things. And I talked about that with Susan Bratton too on here, that like podcasts are one of the last frontiers where you're really not censored. You just mark your show explicit, and then people put, whatever parental controls they put on their kids' phones, and adults can make their own decisions, and I really think that's how it should be on Instagram and Facebook and all of those other platforms too. So, I mean, how has that been for you? Like kind of promoting?
Terrible.
Okay.
It's been absolutely horrible. Like, to be honest, like, first of all, my show is called Sex Party.
Right.
So they're just like automatically outside the gate with a pitchfork and a shotgun ready to go.
This guy. Yeah.
For real. And like, I've already had them take away one Instagram account.
Oh.
And so I'm on my second Instagram account. Just recently, actually the week that we're recording this, my current episode is live wherever you find podcasts, but it is not on YouTube. There's a 24-hour delay on YouTube because they gave me my first, one of my first community guidelines strike. And
I didn't even know that was a thing. This is good for me to know.
It is a thing. Yeah. Okay. And like, it doesn't make sense because I went and found 100 YouTube videos that have that say the same things that are all podcasts.
It's so inconsistent.
And I'm like, hey, and then I actually got to a person like, well, there's nothing we can do. Our internal team. I was like, well, your internal team sucks and needs a fucking, so they, like, YouTube was the last place that I thought they'd come for me. And now they're coming for me there.
I'm surprised to hear that too. I mean, I was just going to say my editor, but my editor is now your editor.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like my previous editor though. I had to have her like censor, I'm like, here's all the words to censor and you need to bleep them out and then you just like eliminate them in the captions because I want people to know this because this is part of the sex negativity of our culture and why Dustin and I have to do the work that we're doing in the world and why it's necessary because this is what we're dealing with. It's like, you have a body, you have genitals, your body is capable of sexual pleasure. Your mind is capable of sexual pleasure. You were born because of sex. And yet, let's just censor the crap out of it and like really limit the information and try to prevent all the pleasure because it's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, obviously I've always hated censorship and, I grew up in the 90s and shit. And it's like, it's so, how do I say this? It's so out of control. And I think in a lot of ways, Instagram and TikTok, mainly Instagram, I'll stick with that one.
Yeah.
Instagram has become almost like the new church, like the new religion.
It does feel like that to me.
It's really scary. Yeah. And I think like, they've invented this thing. It's fucking 20 years old now. Meta is 20 years old. And it's almost, I think, obviously it's worldwide. It's in everyone's phones. They have this system of algorithms. They have AI now like everywhere. And so to me, the not the CEO, but the creative director of whatever the fuck his title is, Adam Mosseri over on Instagram. He just comes out in a real kitschy sweater and a cool necklace. It's like, hey, this week on Instagram we're rolling out turbo bombs, and it's like, so if you want to throw your friend a turbo bomb, you type in shut the fuck up. Yeah. Just turn the engagement back up and let us say and talk about what the fuck we want to do.
Right. They're not going to anytime soon.
No. And they're setting the bar so in this weird way where they're literally hunting down, sex creators and terminating them. Mine got terminated. At the time I was talking to somebody really big, which I'm engaging with again to try to get on my show, and she was
almost as big as me, would you say? JK. No comment.
She's over in the UK, and she was like leading a protest outside the Meta offices because
wow.
Yeah. And like, I mean, Wired magazine wound up like doing a story because of what she did, but then it just goes away.
Yeah.
And for me, because the name of the show is Sex Party with Dustin Rybka.
Yep.
And I changed the picture to a picture of myself with the whatever. And because of those two things, my name is in it. I got a picture of me. I was able to get a blue check mark
cool.
for Sex Party and like pay for it every month.
Yeah.
And since I did that, they just left me alone. So
interesting.
Very interesting.
And I do, that's a good point too. I definitely get like content warnings, like this content may go against our guidelines and your account is not being shown to anyone, but that's the worst I've gotten so far. And I got a blue check mark for being quoted in like Cosmo and Women's Health. So
nice.
Yeah. So I do think that maybe that helps, where they're like, oh, okay, maybe she's like sort of legit. But it's like, they still don't like me, but like,
but I mean, why, like what the fuck is that? When is that going to change? And what's the end goal to eliminate sex and sexual pleasure from
It's a great question. And, as much as I think it's important, like I also support people's right not to listen to my podcast. It's like, people don't have to listen to it if they'd rather be unhappy and have fewer orgasms. That's fine. I don't understand it, but like,
I mean, I welcome the weird thing in all this is that over on Facebook, I managed somehow to build a Facebook page for Sex Party with Dustin Rybka that is like around 64 or 65,000 people.
That's incredible.
Like all organic. And the thing is I've had a couple nothing is edited over there, by the way. It's all unedited.
And it's a business page, which I feel like it's harder to grow a business page than like a personal page or a group even.
And that's because like there's been, I would say, at least one reel a month will go over 500,000.
Amazing.
But there are like three or four that have hit 2 million.
Okay.
And gone viral. And so it just dumps in. And a lot of it is like hate likes. Like, so there are people that like the page and then just hate on every fucking thing I post and probably report it. But like I asked an expert friend of mine in social media, like, well, so why aren't they, what's going on? Like, why have I not received? Because I'm just waiting for them to pull the plug on it. And they're like, oh, because you're delivering them too much traffic. And I'm like, wait a minute.
What?
And so it's like the mafia, right? Like, as long as you're an earner, they won't fucking take you out. But if you're not earning, then you're out. He's like, they're not going to eliminate somebody who potentially would get them 2 million views for them to put ads on. And here's the crazier part.
Ooh, that makes sense.
They're fucking paying me. I'm literally getting money. Yeah. I signed up for monetization. Like, this will never work. And the last 6 months, they paid me every single month. It just deposits right in my account.
That's so crazy.
Thanks, Meta.
Right. It's like hearing what you're saying. You're just like, clearly the system is not working in the best interest of humanity. It's like, it's set up very specifically for them to make money, period. So I think those of you who are like, hey, sex is important and we need to talk about it, I think podcast is the way to be. Check out Dustin's podcast, keep listening here, find some other ones you like, but like, this is where you're going to find uncensored content. Like, this is kind of it. And even with advertisers, I've had a few people reach out about like partnering, or they want me to promote their products. And, I'm like fairly fussy, and it's often not worth the time for what they want to pay me. But
we're not dealing with her.
So
send the lube to somebody else.
Exactly. It was a lube company I was thinking of.
It's always a lube company.
It's always a lube company. But it's like they have nowhere else to promote their products too, because they're getting censored all over the place too. And so part of me is like, it's a wonder that anyone is finding any educational information about sex. Like, it's wild. So
no, I mean, it's so, again, I go back to this thing is like, what is the end goal? Is it just so that you can sleep better at night? Like, and who is you? Is it Mark Zuckerberg or Adam Mosseri? Like what, like, I'm not sure what the issue is.
I think it's all money.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's also like completely like why target sex, right? And like
Mm.
it's okay. It's okay to like run ads for Viagra, but you can't for like a
Uh-huh.
period fucking
Yep.
thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's so. What's the message
Right,
there?
because
Like,
periods are gross. Women's genitals are
well,
gross. Didn't you know that?
again, it's sort of a we hate women thing, and
Right,
like
right.
that's the approach that I've taken on my show. Is like, oh no, 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 no. Like I might be some heterosexual white dude, literally the last demographic we need to hear from on sex, but I have a female guest every time, and so
Mhm.
I'm sort of like, and I get called all sorts of names for that, like from other dudes who probably haven't seen a real woman in ever.
It's
But
possible, yeah.
yeah, I don't. That's my fight. Is that I don't think that any of this gets better until everything is equal. And if you don't believe
Mm.
that, like fuck right off, because I
Mhm.
just think there's just no way that until like women are making as much, women are able to participate as much, women are able to like come as much
Mhm.
unequivocally and unapologetically, women are able to like watch whatever porn they like
Yep.
and sleep whenever they want, and like
Mhm.
until women are equal to men,
Mhm.
they're like it doesn't get better. I mean, imagine, and I'll speak to any dudes who may be listening, but like
Mhm.
imagine how much better your life would be and how much better sex would be, and like coming home from a long day's work would be if things were equal for your female partner. You know what I mean? If it
Yeah.
wasn't this slanted thing. So I'm of the mind, and I have 4 sisters
Oh, cool.
and am incredibly close with my mom and was incredibly close with my grandmother. Like those women raised me. And so it's like, I just don't think anything gets any better until things are at least equal,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to me, it's a no brainer.
I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate men who are feminists, and like you said, white men who are feminists and trying to like
Yeah.
do something positive out there with it. And I think you're kind of showing an example. It's like you can be very sexual and have a sex podcast and also be
Yeah.
like really appreciative of women, and not, I just think people
Sure.
have all these assumptions, so it's good to just debunk those.
Yeah. And I just people just like, there's this weird thing where it's like, I mean, I'm far from perfect. And I've like, we can talk about this. Like I've gaslit, I've been a shitty partner,
Mm-hmm.
all the things, but the thing is like, I just don't think that you get anywhere until you just start being yourself, kind
Yeah.
of. I don't know. Like ultimately find a way to be who you are and just go for that. And I just think that's the difference nowadays is you do have men who will say what they feel and whatever, but most of the time it's just like shitty and bad behavior. And it's
Right.
like, wait a minute, like why would you want to like hurt people and put people for what reasons? You can go home and like masturbate with glass on your or what? I don't know. Like what is the problem? Like I don't get it.
I
Like
don't
if
know.
you're pissing everyone off and you're putting down every woman or every dude is like, you know, less of a man because he sticks up for a woman and all these things,
Mm-hmm.
like who are you friends with? Like
Andrew
do you
Tate?
have exactly. Like,
Yeah.
what? Could you imagine being Andrew Tate's mom?
Oh God.
Exactly. That's what I
I wonder
mean.
if she
Like,
was like mean to him and that's why he has issues.
potentially. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know the story there, but Jesus, that would be a
I
question to
saw
ask
some like
him.
ridiculous quote on Instagram. And so I'm not going to claim it's 100% true, but it was like he had tweeted something that was like, real men don't get hungry. Real men don't need to eat food or something. And I'm like, do you have like,
That's got to be
and like,
fake.
I think it was maybe real. It was sort of like, you should be tough and you shouldn't need to like be full. And I'm like, this is weird. I think you have body dysmorphia, Andrew Tate.
Oh, he totally does. Yeah.
Okay. Because I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
I'm
for
like, this
sure.
is not, no. Anyways, but I wanted to ask you, how did you get
Sure.
passionate about sex? I mean, a lot of people like sex, but what made you think like, I want to do a deep dive on this?
Um, Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Here on Ask a Sex Therapist. Um, so when I so I think secretly,
Mm-hmm.
but really, I think a big part of the reason I became a promoter, host, nightlife guy was because I was just at 19, I was like sick and tired of using pickup lines and like just
Okay.
being, I just didn't feel good being a normal person,
Yeah.
right? I needed to find a stage to, because I thought, okay, if I can just find a way to elevate myself, they'll just come to me, right? And
Okay.
so be careful what you wish for, because I within a year, 2 years, I was involved in the nightlife, and and then I hit I someone offered me a job, and I took it and was really good at it. And our first big event together, like they normally would do like 200 to 400 people, and with this event we had like 2,500 people
Oh,
show up.
wow.
Yeah, and so it was like 0 to 900 really fast, and with that, was exactly what I wanted. Was a lot of attention. I was terrible on the microphone. The DJ had ripped it out of my
Interesting.
hands. Yeah,
That's
I mean, I had to
crazy. And
learn.
look at you
Yeah,
now.
it's like a fucking firing squad, but there's no better way to learn, right?
Yeah.
And there was just a ton of sex, and it was like being thrown at me. The more successful I would be and the less that I would pay attention to women, the more women would throw themselves at me, which was very
Interesting.
nice.
Very nice. It
Yeah,
does sound
it
nice for you.
was.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the way I promoted was like, you'd have a nightclub on a regular night. It's like 7, 8, 9,000 people in it. And
Wow.
I would take the microphone at the very end once I was comfortable with it or better at it. And I would say like, okay, the party's over, but like for a few of you, and I would invite 100 people back to my apartment.
Wait, to your apartment?
To the chagrin of my
Oh
roommate,
my God.
who we had to double up whiskey shots for just to get him to go away. And so what happened is I think over time, people began to think, okay, this guy is available, but in a way that's like, it doesn't matter who he's dating, doesn't matter like who who he's linked to or whatever it is. Like if I pay the cover, like I'm going home with him, or I'm going back to his apartment. I know he's whatever. And so that sort of became a thing where I was promoting the clubs and all those things, but it was like more so like I would talk to these people. I would learn, I would, my sort of like usual Saturday, if Saturday's the big night, is like I would get up at like whatever time, work out, and like try to shake off Friday's hangover, and then you'd like you'd hit the mall or something while you're like going through on your phone, and you'd whatever, and then like, okay, whose birthday is it today? Like you'd go and hit 3 birthday parties, and then stop by the pool party, and then have one drink at 10 places, and then you'd go to work because you would,
Oh my gosh.
and so people would just like be really excited, and I would know how many this guy's dating so and so but is cheating on her with this person, and this girl doesn't like her. I knew all that. And so people, and I never ratted it on anybody, and so it was a lot about relationships. But when it became like this sort of, I'm there, I'm on stage, I've been at 30 places in one day, and then we're going to have an after party. You would have like women that would be like competing, sort of like for who's going to wind up in my bed, and all those things. And that was something that like no kid, back in Ohio, that's like a 1% out of a million kind of a thing. And I knew that when I had that, and I was incredibly grateful for it, and partook in all sorts of like wacky shit we can get into. But so I went from like having like like being a 19, 20, 21-year-old who was having like the normal amount of sex, which is like once a month or once every week or whatever, once a weekend or something, to like having sex like 3, 4, 5 times a week with 3, 4, 5 different partners.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like the kind of sex that you'd want to be having in your 20s, just wild, like anything goes. Like threesomes, foursomes, all those things, right? And it was that wild nightlife kind of shit, you know? And it was fucking great. And so I had always been interested in sex, and that just sort of fed it. It kept feeding it, kept feeding it. And then in the later years, I think what I said, the foundation I laid so beautifully just now. No, I'm kidding. It's my podcast ego coming through.
There you go.
About like people feeling comfortable with me is when I got into my 30s and people were still like kind of clubbing, but I would have like 3 events a year at that point instead of every weekend.
Okay.
So I was like doing more social media consulting, but still doing like 2-3 events, a big New Year's party, big Halloween party, then like, I don't know, something in the summer or something. And they were big, they were bangers. There was a couple thousand people per, but like women who, it was the strangest thing, but like women who were in relationships, like whether they had a boyfriend or they were married or they were engaged, they would like just gravitate to me, usually first through like social media or text, and it would turn sexual like incredibly fast.
Interesting.
And some of them, you know, it would become physical between the two of us, and others were just like, it was just a digital thing, right? Like they would like send pictures and we would like sext and like whatever. But like that became a thing that lasted for a really, really long time. For a period of time in my life, in my mid to late 30s, I would say 80 to 90% of the women that were texting me that I was involved with all had partners that had no idea, right? And I say this because, you know, I had one rule in that, and it was that I'm not gonna go and snatch someone from their partner. I don't need to. I don't want to. It doesn't turn me on. No, it turns me on if I present the fact that they have a husband, they have a boyfriend, they have a fiance, and they still cross the line. Now I'm intrigued. So whenever
you're like a bad girl.
pretty much, yeah. I'm definitely a bad girl. When they would say like, oh yeah, like, and the first sexual comment would come out, because you could almost time it by your watch, right? I would be like, oh, well, like, you know, you have a boyfriend, or you have a husband, or you're married, or you're blah, 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 blah. And then they'd be like, does that bother you? Or something like that. And I'd be like, it doesn't bother me, but one, because that way there's a text in there. So when the husband finds it and he's like, okay, he did say something to her, maybe I'll spare him, whatever. And
it was you trying not to die.
Yeah. And two, that puts down a very firm line. Like, I know, and you know.
Right.
And if you still cross it, now I'm horny. You know what I mean?
I'm so honest. I love how honest you are.
I mean, what am I going to do? You know,
why else be
at
here,
this
right?
point? Yeah.
All right. So I'd love to hear like a story or two about some of the wild things in nightclubs. I'm not super familiar with nightclub scenes. I'm sure a lot of the listeners are not either. So like, what went down? What kind of crazy things happened?
Oh, geez.
I know.
I'm trying to think of some stories I haven't told, right? So you can get some fresh ones.
Okay.
So there's one story, and I won't go into like super detail because they've heard this one a million times if they've seen me on other podcasts.
Okay.
There was one night we were doing the after hours party, and what we would do is we would, you know, we'd go to the grocery store like that week, and we'd just get like 50 pizzas and like 10, 15 cases of beer and like 10, 15 bottles, right? And like sometimes like the nightclub would just provide the booze or whatever, but we would like really take it seriously. And you had to be invited, even though I would say it on the microphone, you know, people would swarm because I would point to like, you know, the best friend or something, and I'd be like, and it would be their job to then delegate who got in and who didn't. So it was a very like, you know, for a very well organized system you know, as well as it could be at 2 a.m.
Like, how do you, like, because you have to give out your address to people, right?
Yeah, and the thing is like maybe you had someone there the week before and they were just a fucking disaster, and they know, and so now they're coming whether they're invited or not. So eventually we did like put like a big, stocky dude at the door and like say like, hey, like, Janine can't fucking come this time. Like get 2 weeks. You can't.
Okay.
She threw the jelly beans. Like, fuck
Janine.
that. No. Yeah. Yeah. Fucking Janine, man.
Okay.
Yeah. So we would do little things like that. And then like I had if they were like, if I looked across and like Josh is like talking to a girl and he's like giving me the look like, I don't know, I don't know about this one, like whatever. Like I could just be like, and that meant yes.
Okay.
And like I could go like that and that meant no.
Like symbols. Like, so you'd be like a salute or a peace sign, and that would be like
right. Yes or no. Peace is like bye. Right. And like salute's like,
okay.
I'll see you over there.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. It's a good system.
Yeah. And like my apartment was located suspiciously conveniently close to the club too. So, we would have a caravan, right? Like I would drive out first or whoever was driving me with whatever, like the motorcade, and as long as there wasn't like someone's ex or, someone's fiance at the time, like Lee Harvey Oswald from,
oh my God,
I was okay. I would make it to after hours. Yeah. But usually like my roommate would head over about like half hour before I would like make the announcement. The friends would weed people out.
Cool.
And it would be like 50 to 100 people, but it was a small apartment.
Okay.
It was high up
a lot of people in an apartment in Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was in Ohio. We did do it in Chicago. Yeah. Either way.
Either way, yes.
Yeah, they're about the same size. Yeah. And so this one particular evening, I went into my room, which is normally locked. Like usually go in there and like, I don't know, whatever I have to do, kick my shoes off, fucking change, whatever. And so I go in my room, which is normally locked. This time it wasn't. I don't know why. She may have picked the lock, but I go in my room and I turn the light on and there's just a girl like, in my bed, right?
This is crazy.
Bra and underwear. She's just in bra and underwear. And she's like, oh, hi there. And I know her, but I don't know her like that, right?
So you never had sex with her before?
No.
Wow.
We'd never had sex before. There's a little flirting. Oh, it gets crazier. And so I was like, hold that thought. Was your roommate home? There was 30 people in my apartment. There already was people.
Okay.
Yeah, people were partying and drinking and whatever. And so she's like, like, hey, mister, or whatever she said. I don't know. It was definitely not hey, mister, but
hey, you.
Jeez. Yeah. Hey, stranger. Yeah. No, that's not good. She's just like, how you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm good. I was like, hang on. I need to give somebody something. Hold that thought.
Okay.
I flip the light off. And I leave my room and I go back out to the party. And of course, like, hey, I get tied up for like 15 minutes. Right.
You basically forget about the half naked woman on your bed.
Okay. Yeah. So I do like 2 shots. I wind up in a half. I'm like, I got to get back to the Dean. There's somebody in my bed.
Yeah.
And so whatever. So I go back in there. I don't turn the light on. Very important plot point. Right.
I'm scared.
I get into bed. Okay. Start making out, whatever.
Okay.
No more bra and underwear. She's completely naked this time. The bra and underwear are gone by the time I get in there.
Okay.
And so, like, I reach in the drawer, put on a condom. We start like having like crazy sex, and it's like rough, like turn her around, like the whole thing, and we both have orgasms that are like kind of loud, but there's music and it's like we're kind of using that to our advantage or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, like see you out there, and she's like, whatever. The lights they never came back. Why would I turn the light back
Dustin,
on? Right?
I'm so scared.
You should be scared. There's a big twist coming.
Okay.
And so I love that you're just like dying right now. I go back out to the party and I'm just like, hey, just got laid, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like doing shots, whatever. And I see in front of me the girl I just had sex with, which is impossible because my bedroom is behind me and no one's come out
you left
yet.
Her in there naked, we thought.
So I like climb through the now 60, 75 people that are there.
Oh God.
And I'm like, what magic is that? And she's like, what do you mean? And who the fuck is that stupid bitch that kicked me out of your room? Yeah. So I had sex with a stranger who came in there, apparently, according to the original girl number one, and was like ready to fucking fist fight her.
Oh my God.
Saw that she was in bra and underwear, decided to one up it, went completely naked and waited. I don't think the intention was to deceive, but like I had sex with a complete stranger, like without even knowing.
Do you know who it was? Did you ever find out who it was?
Yeah, that night I have fucking anxiety, and I'm not gonna
that
fucking
would make me so anxious too.
Oh yeah, I like grabbed them both and was like, "Why didn't we just do like a group thing and like whatever?" It became like a gag, but it's like, you know,
my
like
God, that's wild.
Yeah, that there's that story, and then there was another one where there was like there's 5 girls that were out for a bachelorette party. There was some fight that happened. They split off from the like 10 girls. There was just 5 of them, and they just kind of like hung out with me. They're like, we don't really do club here, and like whatever.
Okay.
Like, you know, can we? And I was like, yeah. I was like, you know, hang out up here in this little area with the DJ. Like, help yourself. Like, there's a waitress that'll come around, tell you're on my tab and whatever. And so like they were drinking, and like, you know, they're on stage, there's 1,000 people, whatever.
Okay.
You know, they're in their own little like there's VIP, and then there's like, oh, I work here VIP.
Okay.
So like it's very different.
This was like the special I work here VIP.
Yeah, this is like up on this big stage. Here's the DJ booth, but then like behind and to the side of him is like an area for people that you can't even pay to get in there. It's just an area that I use.
Fancy, I use. It. Okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, once in a while you'd have people come to the club and they would like separate from their friends, or some sort of something. A good friend is in from out of town.
Okay.
My friends, you know, they had their jackets up there and like their valuables.
Sure.
Like there's a security guy, all the things. So like I was like, hey, come on up, you know, like sorry about your bachelorette party. So they're drinking and like whatever, and then of course after hours, and they're like, hey, like can we come back to your house? Like we never get to go out. I was like, sure, and whatever. And so we're back at the same thing. Here we go again. We're back at my apartment, playing drinking games. We had this like thing where we used to like play like if you knock down the Jenga tower, you had to do a shot, but it was like a shot that had been added to by everybody else who had knocked down the tower. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
That's definitely something you do in your 20s.
Yeah.
And then
so we played we played a couple rounds of that. And one thing led to another. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but there's me and 5 girls like in my bedroom. And so one of them was like flirting with me, and then the other one got like kind of territorial. And at this point, like it had been 6 hours of drinking.
Wow.
And I'm just like very straightforward, just like I am now, just younger. And I was like, listen, if you guys like are trying to have a night, right? Like we just set some ground rules, like who's in, who's out, what are we doing? And they were like blown away that someone has just like offered whatever. And so this one girl was like, well, I have a boyfriend, so I can't be involved or whatever. And then her friend's like, but you could watch. And she's like, okay, yeah, I guess I
offered that.
Yeah, I guess I could watch, you know, or whatever. And
what a friend.
You know, all my friends like see me. They see me go in the room with 2 girls. You know, they see me go in the room with like a girl.
Yeah.
But this time I'm going in the room with 5 girls, and they're just like, "Fuck you, dude!" Like,
I can see that.
What is this? You know, you're not even that cool. You know, and so we go in there, and it ends up being like this girl. I'm like, well, hey, grab that chair, right? So she's like sitting in a chair. And at first she's just watching. It's me and her 4 other friends. And like 4 is a lot. I mean, let's be real, right? It's me and 4 girls. Right. Yes.
The coordination, the logistics. I'm just,
Yeah. And they had like never done anything with each other before. But I was like, listen, if we're going to do this, you need to just sort of like go with it for the night, for the time being, if you're comfortable. And they're like, yeah, fuck it, whatever. It was like that kind of the whole night was like yeah, fuck it. So like, I grabbed 2 of them and put them together. Then it's me and the other 2. And like things get really, like time starts passing by and everyone's having sex with everyone.
You have the one watching in the corner.
Well, except now she's over at the bed with her pants completely down, like full on masturbating,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yes. And this is like the I would call it like the crescendo of whatever. And we're all like doing our thing, and like I don't know, it seems like a long time has gone by, right? But the sun is coming up at this point. There's still people partying. And the one girl says it, like whispers to the other girl, and I'm like, what's going on? And before I know it, the girl who's masturbating is actually squirting like all over all of us.
Dustin.
Yes. Like they knew that she was going to do that,
They
right?
did?
Because well, they kind of whispered like, hey, like she looks close kind of a thing.
Wow.
Like, what if she does that? And I was like, wait, what? And then before I could say anything, it was just like a fucking fire hydrant all over the place. So when I'm asked about nightlife stories and sex, like those are the two that really kind of pop out to me a bit.
I understand why. That's pretty crazy.
But yeah. Why wouldn't I start a fucking podcast?
My God.
Sex Party?
So let's bring it full circle though. That was so amazing. But like, what made you decide, okay, I'm kind of done with nightlife, and now you're in like a committed relationship?
Yeah. Well, so after when the pandemic hit, it's sort of, because I don't think you can age out of nightlife. You can do it. If you're like 40, 50, you could still like rock it if you knew what you're doing. If you're appropriately dressing and who cares? And even if you're not, who gives a shit what people think?
It's still
as
fun
long as
for you.
Yeah, and if you can throw a party and that party makes money, guess what?
Right.
You're in. You're in, and you're in forever.
Yep.
But for me, I just felt like I really truly like nightlife is like my first love. And it's, I always tell people like it taught me more than any school, it was like real deal, whether there's sexuality, psychology, marketing, like there's no harder field than that. Like it's easier to sell phone books or something like door to door in the fucking 1950s than it is to fucking, convince 1,000 people to come to your party when they could be anywhere. And so and repeatedly every weekend for 15 years. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
And so I really soured on relationships, and the pandemic hit, and I just thought, okay, I had lived in Chicago a little bit, but I'm like, I'm going to move back to Chicago. Like, so when the pandemic ends, I can come out of it not in this shitty little Ohio city.
Okay.
But in a beautiful place like that is cultured and fun, and like I wouldn't mind dying in if I had to. I just don't. Ohio is not. It's not for lovers.
Chicago, a great place to die.
And so I moved back to Chicago, and I was still kind of in that mindset. I actually thought like, oh wow, look at everything that I've done. I had like a couple of relationships that didn't go well, obviously. A lot of that was my fault, but some of it wasn't. There's always blame to go around. And I just thought like, I'm not made for that, right? And I had someone on my podcast, and I had like a strict rule, like we're not going to do that. We're not going to like, bang the guest and like whatever. But like her and I started talking like, on the side after she did an episode and it aired, and she was just incredibly smart and incredibly kind. Of course, she was engaged to be married, and
right, because that's your type.
Yeah, the whole thing, yeah. But then like the more that it went on, I just felt different. There was something about her, and I think she saw all my chaos and wasn't like everybody else, like, oh, I'm scared of that, And I thought, okay, she just wants what I've always given to people is like a digital fuck buddy, or like maybe we have sex with each other or whatever. But like it just became apparent that her relationship with her fiance at the time like wasn't that great and hadn't been that great for a while.
Okay.
And she went to him and told him like, hey, I kind of met this person. I kind of want to explore
Okay.
it and like whatever. So like as soon as that happened, you know, and I say this to her all the time, like I hate relationships. I really do. I think they're
Interesting.
expensive. I think they're a waste of time. I think they're very limiting, right?
Interesting. Okay.
But I love being in a relationship with her because it's none of those things. And
I love that for you. Okay.
yeah, and like I've never felt like I always was myself, but there was always resistance to it. Like what they would every girlfriend I had, and they're all of my girlfriends are great. Ex-girlfriends are all my girlfriends, all my ex-girlfriends are great people. I would never talk shit about any of them. There's nothing to talk shit about.
Awesome.
But everybody I dated had a desire to change me, to change who I was, what I was doing. They met me through nightlife, but guess what? They don't want me doing anymore, you know?
Right.
And like, you know, now I have a fucking sign behind me that says sex party. So like, I'm sure that a lot of people would have problems with that too. But with Gianna, with my current partner, like I've never felt more seen, and I've never felt like, oh, like I remember telling her in the beginning, like I'm very chaotic. People call me chaotic, da 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 da. And instead of like her being like, oh, that's too bad, like see you later or whatever, she was like, well, in some cultures, like chaos is worshipped like a god. Like they welcome chaos because it's cleansing.
What a cool response.
Right?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't fall in love,
Wow,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after a conversation or 10 like that, I was just like, you know, really truly like felt head over heels and felt real for as public as I've been, and for, you know, being on a stage for half my life, whether it's acting or nightlife, right? Like I never felt more seen than I did when I met her.
That's
and so I was
cute.
like, hate relationships or not, guess who's getting into a relationship?
Yeah.
So we started dating, and it's been like a year and a half. And, you know, we moved in with each other. Like she lived in my little dinky Chicago apartment for 8 months, and now we're in this big apartment together. And it just works, you know, just like worked out. And I think, you know, she loves that I have a sex podcast, and she loves that, you know, I'm like, we should, you know, like, you know, like I always like
try some things, Gianna.
She loves that. And she loves, it's like, I always think of like, you know, if we go to a concert or something, like these are okay seats, but you know, it would be better if I could talk us into, she's like, let's try it. You know, like she's open-minded, not like, oh, I'm nervous. What if you get caught?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You guys are so cute. I mean, I've seen like the clips of you together on Instagram, and I'm just like, she's adorable, by the way. Like so
she's
pretty.
Really, really, yeah.
And yeah, you guys just have a really cool, like adorable energy together. So
thank you. Yeah. I mean, we definitely have been talking about like making more like fun little content like that together, because people seem to really enjoy it. And once in a while we'll like jump on a live on Instagram and or Facebook, and people will are just like really receptive. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So that's always fun. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing like more serious and deep stories and some wild and crazy stories and opening up. This was fun just to get to ask you the question. So if people are like, this Dustin guy is not boring, where can we find more about him? Where can they go find you?
Well, you can find Sex Party with Dustin Rybka everywhere podcasts are available: Apple, Spotify,
Sex Party,
Google, Stitcher, iHeart. It's everywhere. Okay. But you can also find it on YouTube. It's at Sex Party FM.
Nice.
Instagram at sexparty.fm, because we got deleted and had to restart. You can find me at Dustin Rybka, DustinRyb as in boy, KA. I feel like I'm at the DMV.
And we will actually link to these. We're probably not going to link to his naked running around acting story, but maybe. You never know.
Hey, if you could, I always tell people like, my penis is on the internet somewhere. Happy hunting. So whatever. I don't care. I mean, they're gonna they're going to run me through for the podcast or my penis or something.
It's pretty much too late for you to run for political office, but that's okay.
Well, the way things are going, right?
Wouldn't that be cool if we had like a really sex positive politician? I would love it. So
it would be great. Yeah. It should be a woman though.
Thank you. Maybe it'll be me, but probably not because politics seems terrible. So let's stick with podcasting.
Really horrible. Yeah. Podcasting for life.
Podcasters for life. For sure. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. This has been a super fun episode, and I will catch you guys next Monday. Bye.